born? Describe the town you grew up in.
I was born in WWII, Groningen, the Netherlands, in 1938. And the town there, it was a small town. The country was flat. There's no hills there. And lots of nice bike paths and lots of what we call canals now around the different houses. And when the wintertime, when the ice formed, everybody was out ice skating out on those canals and going from town to town.
Describe your favorite family traditions. When did they start and why? Did you pass them on?
My favorite family tradition. I guess it was probably Christmas time. We would always open up our presents on Christmas Eve and have a special luncheon or supper or whatever when we opened our gifts. And then Christmas Day we would generally all go to church together. Back then we always had a church service. And this is something that we are still doing today with my grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and I hope it never discontinues.
Describe your favorite vacation as a kid.
As a kid. The only time we ever went on vacation when I was a child was when we went to Camp Hall Lake, and we had a cottage there for a week. We really enjoyed that because we never got to go on vacations when I was younger because we didn't have the money, and my dad had to work on the farm all the time. So that was about the only vacation that I remember until we got married.
What do your parents do for a living? Describe the standard of living it provided for you and your family.
My dad was a farmer. My mom was a housewife. And the standards are very simple. We didn't have a lot, but we had the love of family, which was very, very important. The money part, we didn't have a lot, but we had animals, so we did get our milk. We got our meat and things like that free. That's something we did not have to buy. But it was a real struggle, I know, for Mom and Dad, but they never complained.
Describe your first job.
My first job, when we were younger, when I was maybe 12, 13, 14, we used to have to help the family's budget. In the summertime, we'd have to go pick cherries or stand in the market and sell things like that to help with the budget at home. And we used to paint fences around our farm, and then the boss would pay us 50 cents an hour to paint. That one summer we painted the whole summer long, every day, because we had a huge farm and it took a long time. That was if you consider that a paid job, that was my first paid job.
Did your friends ever get in trouble? How so?
In high school, no, I really can't say, because my parents were very strict. I could go to basketball games at night, but I had a curfew. We never really did it. No, never did anything that I was ashamed of, or my friends either that I know of.
All right, what do you know about your family history, nationality? What relatives came to America, why and when?
My nationality is basically Dutch. And when we came to America in 1948. And the reason Mom and Dad took the 4 children that were living at the time to America was because there was no future in the Netherlands. So they packed up their whole family and they left their moms and their dads and their brothers and sisters behind and took just the immediate family and moved to America for reasons that we could have a better life.
Can you describe how you met your spouse?
I met my spouse roller skating. It was called Niebuhr's Roller Rink on Plymouth, Michigan, right there. And I had been dating somebody, or I just wanted to meet somebody new. So my girlfriend and I, we looked around the skating rink, and she picked one out, and I picked one out, and it happened to be my future husband. So we were just going to go very careful, just skate around and kind of bump into him a little bit, just to draw their attention. Well, I bumped into him, but instead of him falling or whatever, it was me that fell all over that floor, just wiped right out. But the nice guy that I found out he came around and picked me up, and the following week he asked me out on a date, and that's the way it was.
Describe your wedding.
My wedding, I think it was different from a lot of people. Like I've said before, we didn't have a lot of money. I borrowed my girlfriend's sister's wedding dress to save money. And I got married at Colebrook CRC Church on a Friday night, like we always did back then. And the day of the wedding, I went to church to help set up the tables. And I had my hair in curlers because I did my own hair. And finally, the ladies who were working in the kitchen said to me, "You need to go home and get ready for your wedding." So then I left and went home and got dressed, and we got to church, probably 6 o'clock. Took a few pictures, and then as the wedding progressed, I had, my sister Flo was my maid of honor. Lucy was a bridesmaid, and my girlfriend Gladys Van Dyke at the time was a bridesmaid, and my sisters Susie and Jimmy were flower girl and ring bearer. And then Dad, Hank's side, he had my brother Al, our cousin Art, and his brother Gus. And then as the minister did the ritual, the thing I remember at that point was when he said, you are man and wife, and you may kiss the bride. He gave me a kiss, grabbed my hand, walked back up the aisle. He didn't give me time to grab my bouquet. My sister had to walk up with 2 bouquets. I don't know if anybody else really noticed it, but that was something that stuck out in my mind. And then we just had a reception down in the church. And I remember I had a hoop underneath my dress, like they used to wear then, big hoops. And we were passing out candy like you do after the reception. There was no dancing, nothing like that. There was just we had some songs that we sung, and we had our usual ham sandwiches, potato salad, chips, that kind of thing for our lunch. Then all of a sudden my cousin would say, Evelyn, you can't bend down like that, because when you go down, the hoop goes up. We can see. And then afterwards we got into Hank's car, Dad's car, and there was some of these silly girls, my friends, who were gonna follow us. And so Dad just let them come. We got all the way to Saugatuck, and they were still following us. So then he said, I think it's time to lose them. So then that was our wedding.
Did you have a honeymoon?
We went to the Ozarks. And that was in Missouri, I think, or somewhere in there. And I remember on the way back, we didn't have a lot of time because he had to go back to work. And on our way back, he blew a tire, he blew another tire. And he says to me, I don't have any money. What are we gonna do? I said, I have some money. So we got 2 new tires. It was around Chicago, and then we came back home.
Describe your first house.
Our first house was the cutest little house. Mom went and cleaned it before we moved in, while we were on our honeymoon, and she said, where are they gonna live? There's nothing here. It's just a little hole in the wall. But I thought it was really cute. It was just a small house. We had a bathroom, and we were on the river, which was a main attraction. And then we had a small kitchen, and a little living area, and 2 bedrooms, and a place to wash our clothes. So, but after the first year, 2, Dad said, we cannot, this is too small. So he added on a huge living room. Probably, I don't know, 12 by 20, or it was a good size. So that made a huge difference. But having 4 kids in that house, in 2 bedrooms, it wasn't always the greatest. But we didn't care. It was just, we just loved being together.
Do you remember the address?
No. I know it was Thornapple, 2824. Thornapple River Drive? I'm not sure, but I think something like that.
And what did Dad do for a living?
At that time, Dad and Gus, his brother, were working Thorne's Appliance. They had started up this company, and it was like an appliance place. So they sold refrigerators and stoves and TVs. But they were just starting it, so they didn't make much money at all. But he was right there. We lived right behind the store, so he was right close by at all times.
And then he built another house?
Yes. Then he quit working for Thorne's Appliance, and he worked for one of the distributors, which was Potter Distributing, who was the seller of Hot Point and all those, and they hired Dad on, and then he got his own territory and a car, so he could go out and make sales. So that was a lot better deal. We started making some money. And he also, at that time, when money was tight, he worked for the Fat Man Agency. And that's a detective agency. He'd go out at night, and sometimes wouldn't come home all night. That didn't last long because that was too much, having the kids every day, 4 kids, and then also at night he wasn't there. So that didn't last very long, but he did it to make some extra money to help the family along.
Describe the day my mom and dad was born.
I do not know when your dad was born, but I know when your mom was born, because I was there. She was born on the 10th of June, 50 years ago. And she was born in Blodgett Memorial Hospital here in Grand Rapids. And she was our third child. I'd had two little girls before her. And when she was born, it was just like when the other two were born. We loved her immediately. And thank God for a healthy new little girl. And she has been a blessing and a joy for more than 50 years.
What was the hardest part about parenting?
The hardest part about parenting, I love parenting. I just wished I could go back to that when my four little girls were small, and we did a lot of things together, and we had everyday plans. I didn't work. I worked at home, and I just thoroughly enjoyed it. One day we'd go to my mother, the next maybe one day over to my husband's mother, and otherwise we stayed home, and we just played together and did things together as a family.
What are some struggles that you had of raising four girls?
I don't know if you're supposed to have struggles, but there were times when I just wanted to boot them out into the snow or throw them outside, but I think most of the time, I just loved the time I spent with my girls. I really did. There was a lot of sneaky things that I found out later that they had done that I did not know about. But I probably did the same thing when I was younger, so I don't know.
Describe each of your girls.
Oh, no. Sharon, the oldest. She was ours for a year and a half, all by herself. We doted on her. She was our baby and our only baby at that point. And she had a little temper, even at that young age. Then Connie was born. And she was totally, I don't want to say different, but her personality was different. She was more, even at that point, you go in there and look at her crib, and you think she was sleeping, and you look at her and she give you that big grin. And I think, why, you rascal. You can never figure her out, but she did cry a lot. Sherry really didn't either. And then the two, well, they were still quite young. Connie was just a year old when Linda came along. And three don't always work too good at times. I'm not saying they didn't get along, but I mean, it was sometimes a little tug of war between the three of them. Then there was almost 4 years. Then Dawn came along. She was spoiled rotten by her sisters. I don't think Linda so much. Because Linda had been the youngest for a few years, and now somebody else came along, and she's got to share her life with this little baby, which is pretty hard for her. But on the whole, all four girls, Sherry was the leader right from day one, I think. And Connie, she was the little instigator. That's what I always called her. Nothing wrong with that. Linda was in between the two of them. I mean, she could go either way, you know. And then Dawn, she was more quiet, but I think she kept a lot to herself when she was little. Sometimes you didn't know what she was thinking. But the love I had for those 4 children is unwavering. And there is no difference in my heart for any of those. I love them all the same way, even though we all are different in every respect.
Name some of your vacations you went on as a family.
Family vacations. I think the first big one we went on probably was Yellowstone National Park. I think Dawn must have been maybe a year and a half or 2. And we went, that's where we went. And I remember you guys riding horses. And there was a swimming pool. And we always had to have a place with a swimming pool. But also we did a lot of camping up at Silver Lake as a family. Started out with a tent, then in a pop-up camper, and we had that for years. And then we took a trip with Gus and Jane to Florida, it was a wonderful trip, but the girls said that Auntie Jane just made sure they were covered, made sure they ate good. She was just all over them. But she did it because she loved them. But they were getting it was a little bit much. And that's when we got robbed. We parked our motorhome at the oceanside in a park. Locked the doors, and we went out on the beach. When we got back, the window had been broken, had been busted, and all our money and stuff that we had in there was gone. Sherry's class ring was gone. She had and Gus and Jane's money, everything was intact. They had put it somewhere, I don't know where, but nobody touched their money. And then we went to North Carolina a few times. I think that was our favorite spot, like Cape Hatteras, Chincoteague Island, and in that area. Just on the beach, on the water. And we just had a wonderful time, I think, with our family. And we also went to the Smoky Mountains. And I remember we had a big pool there. And I don't know if it was Linda was trying to learn how to swim at that time. I'm not sure. But you girls were in the water and I think it was Linda. She was trying to learn how to swim. We had some beautiful pictures of her jumping into that water. And where else did we go? Oh my goodness. I don't know.
What has been your favorite time of your life and why?
My favorite time of my life, I think there's more than one. It was that time when my girls were little, and I still had the upper hand. Maybe that's what it. And I loved every minute of it. And also, I think even now, this is a good time of my life too, even as I'm getting older. But I see how my grandchildren are growing and blossoming and turning into these wonderful people and becoming a great parent, great grandparent. It's just been awesome.
If you had superpowers for one day, what cause would you support or what problem would you fix and why?
I think, oh man, there's a lot of problems. But I would love to be able to fix all these needy children that you see who have no love in their homes, no food, nothing to put on their dinner table. I would love to just be able to feed all these children in the world and give them the love that they need and deserve.
If you could give advice to your grandkids and great-grandkids, what would it be?
My advice to the kids or the grandkids, great-grandkids, would be to love your neighbor as yourself. To me, loving one another is a great thing. And if you could love one another, like when Dad died, he put every one of these grandkids on his lap and said, now remember your love for Jesus, or have Jesus in your life. That touched me so. That just really touched me. And I want that for each and every one of them, including the great-grandkids. And to always take care of your family. Family is so important too. God comes first, and then your family. And always live like that, and I think you'll have a very happy life.
Describe the pressures or conflicts you faced as a kid. How did you deal with these?
Well, like I said before, I lived in the Netherlands till I was actually 10. And we struggled during the war, which I still remember very, very well. I remember when an airplane would go overhead, I thought we were gonna die. And when I was 7, my little brother was 6. Mom and Dad decided it was okay for him to walk home from school with his little friends. First time he ever did it, and he had polio when he was a little bit younger, so he was slower than the rest of his little friends. And then the cement truck, it was driven by horses at that time, and was coming down the road, and kids will be kids, and he tried to get on the wagon just like the other of his little friends did, and he fell off, and he got killed. And I remember coming home that day, around the bend, close to home, and somebody came up to me and said, did you know your little brother, Bobby, got killed? And I didn't know what in the world they were talking about. And I went home, and they do not put the people who died into funeral homes. They still do not do that. They lay them out in front of a window for several days until the funeral itself. And I remember at that time, it was so hard. Mom would say, kiss him goodbye. Give him a kiss. Evelyn, give him a kiss. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. Because he was kind of smashed. He had stuff coming out of his nose and things like that. And that's something I will never, ever forget. It took years when I moved to America to be able to go to a funeral home without thinking about him. So that was quite a struggle for me.
What wars affected your life or your family the most? Describe how and why.
Well, I think World War II, that's back to the Netherlands again, but I was I was born in 38, so I was 5, 6, 7, and the war broke out, and the Germans infiltrated into the Netherlands, and they also infiltrated into our house. I remember one night, these Germans, they don't knock on a door, they just walk right in, and Mom had a brand new chair in what we call now a living room. And he had fallen into one of those canals, and he just came in and sat right down in that particular chair that Mom had just gotten. And my mother got very upset. And the German officer who was above the one who sat in the chair also got very upset with the man who sat there and told him to get out and apologize. But then also, we used to sit on the Germans' laps. I hated Germans for a long time because of the war, but you think back, those soldiers were just like our American soldiers that go out. They were defending their country. So, and some of them were just wonderful. We'd sit on their laps and they would cry and tell us about their wives and children back home. And then also my dad, he was a very giving, loving person, and he took in Jews and hid them in his barn. And he could have gotten caught, but they were underneath the hay, and they never did find them. But also my dad got so bad that we would go to bed at night with our clothes on, and our horse and carriage, or whatever you want to call a wagon, that's basically what it was, we would be totally dressed. So in any case we had to leave immediately, we could just get up and go. But it was at that time that also my dad went underground, because they were looking for the men of that area. So my dad would be gone a lot. And with the neighbors, we never really did see a lot of him. So my mom had to deal with a lot of stuff. And they wanted to take all our bikes, and they used our bathrooms. That one bathroom was made a mess out of everything. But we believed in God, and I think we just knew He was going to protect us and take care of us. So we just had to put up with it. And that's what we did.
Describe Dad.
Describe Dad. Well, when I first met him, he was tall and lanky. I mean lanky. He was thin as a rail. Had an answer for everything. I learned to respect him quite soon. Probably part of the reason was when you fall in love, you just learn to respect each other. And once we got married, I saw a different side of Dad. I remember we got married in November, and I remembered March 25th, the following year, was my dad's birthday. And we just go, when there's somebody's birthday, we just go and visit. And I said to Dad, are you about ready to go? Well, I'm not going. And I said, why not? Because I don't want to go. So, and that hurt, but I went by myself. And those type of things happened a lot in the first 5, 6 years of our marriage. If he didn't want to do it, he was not going to do it. That was very hard on me. I cried a lot during that time because, Christmas and those kinds of times, he would. But if there was something, somebody to go visit, they invited us over. If he felt like it, he'd go, but if he didn't, he was not going. But somehow, that kind of worked out. And we used to fight quite a bit, because when he'd go up north on his trips, he never called. I didn't even know where he stayed. But at those times, you didn't have, your cell phones or anything either, but he should have, we never really, I never thought about it. And that's something that I really feel bad about, that we should have really talked, when he was going up north, at least say, I'm fine and all this and that. It was never done. So I think for a while there, he did his thing. He was like, and I kind of was with the girls, all the games and all that stuff, and he could never go. And I don't think he made a special effort at times either. But that all changed once they got grown and got married and got kids of their own. Boy, oh boy, then he changed. Everything was for his grandkids or his kids, or, come on, we need to do this, let's go do this for him or that for him. Then, and he loved people, and he cared about people, and he helped a lot of different people. But he was pretty selfish back in his early years. He really was. I had quite a time. But I never ran to my mom or dad or anything like that. We just handled it. And in those days, if we needed money, we just went working somewhere else and made some money. We didn't go say, hey, I need $100. Can you give me $100? That was not even thought of in those days. But we gave a lot of money to people that we shouldn't have given money to, especially Dad. I mean, he'd loan people, pay off people's cars. One time he did that. I had to pay that $2,000 because I took care of the budget. I was fuming every time I had to write that check. Because he, and he knew it. But he was that way. He just gave and gave and gave. But he was very, he wasn't a dictator, but he could sit you down and make you see that he was right and you were wrong, which used to bug the living daylights out of me. Because he'd sit in his blue chair there, and we'd be having a conversation, and he would start humming. And I said, well, you knock it off. You're not always right. And he'd hum and hum, so I'd get in the car and I'd take off. Get back, but he wouldn't apologize. Never said I'm sorry. I mean, that was just him. And you just learn to look at his good side, which was wonderful. He loved his Lord. He used to sit in that chair and meditate, just like the thinker. He'd just sit there like this. And I'd say, what are you doing? Oh, I'm just meditating. And I'd say, what are you meditating about? Oh, just things. But he was just, by that time, we had become such good buddies. It took a few years, but you have to learn to look past some of the things that you don't like. Because if you don't, you'll have a problem for all the time. And we learned that we were friends and we were a team. Whenever we did things, he would say, now remember, we're a team, so we're going to do this together. And pretty soon, it just felt like we were a team. And we could, you know, we could sit and talk about our Lord, and it was just last night I sat there and I thought, it's been almost 12 years. Just think of what we could have done in the last 12 years together. But he's in heaven with his Father, and someday I'll be there too. And I loved him deeply, and I know he loved me too. He wasn't always one to give you flowers or anything like that, but you just learn that isn't everything anyway. It's just what comes from the heart. And his heart was always right.
Describe and tell me about when Dad was diagnosed and the last few months of what you went through.
The last year, in fact, I think it was a little bit more even, or maybe it was more than even a year. Because I remember Linda saying he loves to help his kids. He loved doing things for his kids. If they needed help, or anybody else for that matter, if they needed help, he was there. And Linda said to me later on, you know, he had this cancer, this illness for a long time, because I could see when we moved into our house off of Alpine, he tried to help and he just couldn't do it. So that was, I think it was early spring maybe. And then he had to have some testing done. Then at that one point, he had prostate cancer first. And they were going to do surgery. And he had set it up to get the surgery done. And then the night before, he called to find out exactly the time he had to be there. They said there was no surgery set up. And I remember him getting on the phone. This was way before this other thing, though. Yeah, way before. And anyway, then he was fuming mad. He got a hold of the doctor. And he says, you canceled my surgery. I'm going to be there, and I want that surgery. They were going to check and see if it had gone into his bones at that time, the cancer. Because he knew it was cancer. But, so he did go in. Finally, they did do the, kind of more like a biopsy. And at that point, he came back. I was waiting in the restaurant at Lodge's Hospital. And he came back and he was crying and he says, it's okay. It didn't get into my bones. And then, I don't know how much later, this other thing started, showing up. He wasn't feeling good and all that. And then they did the testing and found there was something definitely wrong with his lungs. And so they set up a surgery appointment for him on, I think it was October 26th. And we went on vacation the September before, and he did miraculously. I knew that was a gift from God that we had, because that whole week, he seemed to be fine. And I know that was a gift from God. And he did all these things around the house. He bought me pots and pans. He bought me ladders. And then he fixed up a garden place in the back of the house and worked at night. And he'd come in the house and he'd be sweating profusely. But he said, no, I want to get that done. So then when we got back from our vacation, my dad started not feeling good. So we took him in, and he had cancer of the throat or something. And he lasted only 2 weeks. So then he died like October 22nd, and then I said to my sisters, I said, if it's okay with you, could we have that funeral early, a day early? Because Hank was going to have that biopsy or that thing done on the 26th. So we had it done on the 25th, the funeral. And it was pouring rain. And Dad said, do you want to go to the cemetery? And I said, yes. And then I got to thinking about it. I said, no, you cannot do this. So we went home. And then on the 26th, we went to the hospital. And my brother Jim was there, and he never comes to anything like that. And Margie. And they were in the waiting room. And I don't know who else was there anymore. And when the doctor came out, he called me aside, and he never looked at me. And he said, he's got 6 months to live. And I said, whoa, I want my brother and sister to hear this. So I called them in, and he said it again. Then I said, he's not going to die because I just buried my dad yesterday, and I can't bury another one that I love. So anyway, he was a tough time. No more than, not even 4 months. February 19th is when he died, early in the morning, about 9 o'clock. And it was a tough road for him, and I think for all of us, to see him suffer through this. I don't know how much weight he lost, but I'd say close to, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 pounds. He was like it was a nightmare. But we had some precious moments too, where we could talk to him and ask him some questions, but he would never answer my questions that I wanted answered. But today I know the reason why. Because he wanted me to figure this out for myself, knowing that the Holy Spirit is working in my heart. He couldn't tell me how to love God. I had to love God on my own and really live for Him and through Him. And that's what I still think that was part of the reason that He left us so early. That's just my opinion.
Describe your most embarrassing moment.
Got it. I love parenting. I'm not even saying that word right. Parenting. And it was that particular social group that I really got into.
That was fine, girl.
Okay. She was born June 10th. No, correct. The last year of his life. Excuse me.
Just so everybody knows, Adam just walked in with a huge plate of food.